On the day God made the earth and the heavens, when no plant of the field was yet in the earth, and no herb of the field had yet sprung up, for God had not made it rain upon the earth, and there was no human to till the earth, and a moisture had welled up and covered the face of the earth, then God fashioned a human out of the humus, Adam out of Adamah. And God breathed into the human the breath of life, and the human became a living being. And God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and placed there the human being God had made. And God caused to spring up from the soil every type of tree desirable to see and good to eat, and the tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God placed the human being in the Garden of Eden to till it and to keep it. And God said to the human being, "You may freely eat of every tree in the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for on the day that you eat of it, you shall die." Now, this is the part of the story that tends to get our attention, doesn't it? And so most Christians, most of the time, have understood this story to be a story about a divine prohibition and human disobedience and a consequent exile away from the Garden of Delight into a world of toil and trouble. And so it is. It is a story about human disobedience, and it is a story about humanity falling away from trusting God. But that's not all it is. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that that's not even primarily what the story is about. It is a story about disobedience. It is a story about humanity falling away from God. But primarily, it's a story about humanity falling away from the garden, about humanity falling away from the sacred vocation for which human beings are made in the first place. Remember, this story does not begin with a leafy, lush paradise complete with toucans and coconuts. No, this story begins with a landscape as barren as the moon. Not one creature, not one tree, not one blade of grass, just mud in every direction as far as the eye can see. This is a landscape of death. Bleak, barren, muddy death. Nothing living. Nothing growing. And the reason for this, there are two reasons given in the story. The first is that God had not yet made rain. And the second is that God had not yet made you, the human, made of humus, Adam, made of Adamah, the creature made of mud, who is given the task, the charge, and the privilege to take care of the mud so that the mud might bloom. That's who you really are. That's who I really am. This story is 3,000 years old, give or take, but make no mistake, this is a portrait of you. You are the gardener. You are charged with tilling and keeping the garden. The Hebrew word here is avad, to till, to work, to serve, to revere. That's the gardener's charge. But also to keep, shamar in Hebrew, to observe, to watch, to protect, to guard against threats of all kinds so that delight might thrive. That's who you are. That's who I am. And when humanity is exiled from the garden, that's bad news for humanity. But it's also bad news for the garden. The whole logic of this story suggests that when the gardeners become lost and disconnected from their own true identity, their own true vocation, then that muddy moon, that landscape of death, bit by bit, inch by inch, will come back, will return. Have you seen it? It looks like human cruelty or negligence against any creature, human or otherwise. That's what it looks like. It looks like destruction, annihilation of whole habitats, whole species, species after species, at a rate unprecedented in human history, going on right now. That's what it looks like. It looks like cities planned without wisdom. It looks like seashores choked with human refuse that somebody threw into the sea. Every decision we make, every relationship, every conversation, every choice about what to eat or what to wear or how to get from here to there, every decision we make can be brought into the service of hastening the day that that landscape of death returns. Some call this decreation, dismantling the garden, turning it back into mud. But by the same token, every decision we make, every choice about what to eat or wear or how to get from here to there can be brought into the service of restoring humanity to its true vocation, our true vocation, restoring us to who we really are. This is where Christianity begins, with this story. It is a story about falling away from God, but at the same time, it's a story about falling away from creation, falling away from who we really are. And so what is sin? Sin is forgetting who we are. Creatures loved by God, given this sacred task to care for the world. Sin is forgetting that. Forgetting that we are creatures made of mud so that the mud might bloom. Sin is forgetting that. And what is salvation? It's remembering. It's remembering who we really are and remembering so deeply and vividly that we live out lives of remembrance, lives of thanksgiving for the beauty of the earth all around us, radiant and clear, delightful, shining. So friends, lend your hand, roll up your sleeves, pick up your shovel, let us go into the garden to work it, serve it, revere it, observe it, watch it, protect it. But don't do it to be right. God did not put you in the garden of righteousness. God put you in the Garden of Eden, the garden of pleasure, the garden of joy. Don't do it to be right, do it to be human. Do it to be more humane. Do it to be who you really are. The guardian of joy, of pleasure, of delight. The one whose salvation is bound up in the salvation of the garden. Friends, let us go out into that radiant beauty that we are given so that we might till it, so that we might keep it. Come and be a creature again. Going with God to till and to keep.